some of your names and the rest of your faces. And it's funny, the chamber is my passion and my hobby. And I'm going to share with you things today that are part of what I do every day and what I've had a chance to do for people over time and some perspective. I try to always reflect upon the human aspect of everything I do. The person that made me a really good lawyer, the person that gave me empathy and made me understand that solving a client's legal problem is not just nuts and bolts and what the law is, but it really is anxiety producing when people have a problem and they don't quite know how to deal with it, and it involves the law. And Jeannie Etter, who was the woman I hired to represent me on a case, just taught me that it's really important that you hear your clients, feel their pain, let them know that you understand it, let them know you have a game plan to get them out of it, and give them that comfort within the context of whatever time you're consulting with them. And I've done a lot of that. You can't really charge people for some of this advice, and their old friends and their clients, but what I gleaned that I thought was really important to share is just how important, we all know how important a job is. You know, we've shared friendships with people that have been on hard times, lost a job, tried hard to find a new job, and we know the importance to the human being of being employed. What struck me is a little bit different, because you don't typically see the vulnerability of business owners. That's not what they convey, and it's not what they share, but in times like these, you really feel several things that I think are noteworthy, because it motivates some of the angles in which all of us are looking at these things. The business owner has a great deal of pride in their business, and they see it as a great achievement. This is much the same way parents see raising a child and getting them off to college and finally having them employed and finally off your spreadsheet. But they see it as a real achievement, and they have an incredible passion and determination to succeed, even at times like this. And they not only do that because it's their business and their baby and their pride and joy, much like someone who restores an antique car. They have a lot of passion and pride in it, but they also feel responsible for the people that allow them to run their business. And they're now responsible for them both financially and from a health perspective. So the amount of levels of concern that the business owner has to sort through is tremendous. And I have been so impressed at how business people have absorbed every detail of what's published, what's available, what is available on television, what the government is telling them, what the government isn't telling them, and have somehow synthesized all of that into a set of action items that are going to be implemented by business people at times, in terms of calendar deadlines and milestones that they have set for themselves and their businesses, largely tied to cash flow, largely tied to collections, which is an unknown, and largely tied to whether or not the government is going to make these loans and other assistance programs available. What really drives me nuts, and I'm going to tell you a quick story, is that much of what we have in terms of disruption to the economy was entirely avoidable. And what I mean by that is roughly, and I don't know the scientific number, but roughly 80% of our economy can still function. We're proving that we can work from home. We're proving that we can adjust. We're proving that it's not that easy to work from home, but we're proving that we can run businesses from disparate locations. But restaurants are hardest hit. Those who make a living by working in other people's homes, whether that's a workman, a plumber, a painter, they're having a tough. Healthcare workers are under direct orders, in many cases local. And it's interesting. I'd like to thank my local elected officials who are on this call. And I would like to thank all of you who are in public service that are on this call, because without local representation, I feel as though we would be really lost. And I know how hard all of you have been working, but it didn't come early, and business people were trying to figure this stuff out on their own. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, what does a business do if they are able to function and they have reasonable cash flow, but their business requires that the doors be open, or their business requires that people enter the homes of other people? Are they done? Are they out of business? Or can they take reasonable steps to re-enter, the economic pulse of the country. In many cases, the folks that I've been talking to have already done so. They are open based upon some of these ideas. So the law is the first thing we assess. What does the law require of a business that tries to open in the time of Corona? Well, it really depends upon whether you can open that business and comply with local, state, and national directives, which in many cases are advisory and not binding. And then it is the old, have you exercised reasonable care? Have you behaved reasonably under the circumstances? So there's a real interesting question that only nerds, only lawyers would nerd out over, and that is, if you did open your business and someone were later to sue you, saying you opened your business and exposed them to coronavirus, do they have a good claim against you? Well, depending on some factors we will discuss, they might. And certainly lawyers will be creative and try to make a living, but there's a key component we should always keep in mind. The law, if it's nothing else, it requires strict compliance with certain criteria. And one of them is, can you actually prove that that someone was subjected to corona through the operation of a business? So it's nearly impossible for anyone to say that they contracted something based upon a plumber that came in their house, as opposed to a surface, as opposed to a grocery store, as opposed to all of the other interactions they have had. And I would say that that would be the thing that a lawyer or a law firm or a business would hang their hat on if they had to defend the conduct. But is there insurance? Yeah, there is. There's insurance on most businesses for garden variety negligence. And that's the opposite of what I said. It's the absence or the failure to exercise reasonable care. The extreme example, if you've had a chance or heard of anyone who's a patient of the Borenstein Medical Office, the dermatology group that's right around the corner for where the chamber has its breakfast at the Marriott. They have a door. You stand outside the door. It's a double glass door. You walk in one at a time. They shoot you with a temperature thing. They ask you some questions similar to a questionnaire I'm going to show you in a moment. And if you give any question that makes them a little bit nervous, they go talk to an actual physician about whether or not this person can come into the practice. But assuming all that's fine, they give you a pen that's been not sterilized, but has been wiped clean. And then you get to certify that you haven't been, exposed to certain situations or people, and then they treat you. At the Cooper, before they closed, when they brought your check and your credit card, they would bring you a pen that was wrapped in some sort of a Clorox type of document. I'm sorry, a cloth that was antiseptic. And so they made you feel at least as though they were protecting you. And you might argue that that's the type of conduct that is reasonable care. So what do we do about these businesses that are going to die unless they can allow people into their businesses or go into people's homes? Well, what we've tried to do is to establish for each individual business what makes sense, what is reasonable under the circumstances. This is something we've been doing for a while, but realize this is about what we're about to launch into. We're about to reopen this economy, apparently, based upon what I see on television and read in the newspaper. And if so, these kinds of questions become really important, not only for government, who's largely going to form the protocols for this, but for us. Because we're not just worried about our customers, we're worried about our employees. We're not just worried about our employees, we're worried about our employees' families. So if we do something wrong in the workplace, they have the opportunity to take that home and infect, for example, their elderly mom or dad. And it's really concerning. So the first thing we do after assessing the law is assess the risk in a particular business. Can you operate in a sanitary fashion? Can you maintain social distancing? Can you utilize masks and gloves and do that work? Can you do your work in a way that no trace is left on surfaces? And if you can do all of those things, then I think you're in a position to at least consider whether people are willing to do business with your business. That is, are they willing to come into your place of business, or are they willing to have you come into their businesses? So we all know that the unknowns about the coronavirus are probably as great a number as the knowns. We don't know necessarily whether people can be reinfected, although there's both anecdotal and clinical evidence that people can test positive, have the antibodies, and then be reinfected. So that really throws a monkey wrench into the works, because otherwise this kind of an analysis would work. And I'm going to screen share just for a minute, not to bore you, but just to give you an idea of some of the concepts I saw in place at the Borenstein office and some of the things we've done for certain businesses. And I'm certainly hopeful that I can open the right document. Got it. And I hope you can see that. Do you see a document that says employee screening on it? I guess you can't hear me. Shake your head, somebody. Up and down. Okay, great. So, you know, this is something I actually saw at the Borenstein office. They asked about travel. They asked about whether you have had contact. They've asked you whether you've had 3 key symptoms in the past, over time, as well as currently. Some of the businesses operate through independent contractor agreements, and in those independent contractor agreements, they are having those independent contractors certify that they will have these forms filled out and refilled out weekly, so that you know that you're catching people within what we understand to be the window of symptomatology, within the window of infectiousness, and you essentially crafted something at least that is the beginning of reasonable care, both in the law, but also in the eyes of the public, also in the eyes of your customer. And then some people are doing this in advance before they go out to a home, and I'm hoping you can see this. They will send out something that says, we're going to be out there. This is a flooring company. And they're going to say in advance, when they send out the reminder or the invoice, that we care about your safety. All of our employees have been screened. No one is going to be in your home that hasn't been screened. We're going to use health history, actual screening, testing, temperature taking, in order to verify that no one's going to walk into your home or be in our business that has not at least had this preliminary screening. All employees will wear face masks, protective stuff, gloves. They will maintain social distancing. They will ensure sanitary measures. And some of the businesses are actually now making, they're providing an option that, and I've forgotten the name, but it's a maid service. So after they leave, a maid service can come in at the customer's direction and payment and come in and clean all the surfaces that otherwise might be the case. This is really important in the instance of kids of elderly parents. Children of elderly parents care more about their parents than some parents care about themselves. And, you know, it's really important to provide the children of elderly parents the idea that you're doing things in a way that are protecting their mom and dad. And they'll probably be the most difficult and most litigious people if they felt like that you've in any way done anything that doesn't, you know, properly protect mom and dad. So in any event, I'm just going to on-screen share if I can. Don't actually know how to do that. Is there a way for you to take that over from me?
Actually, if you go scroll at the top, there should be an option for you to stop screen share. If not, I can take it back.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing it. I'm just going to continue. So in any event, we believe that we can instruct a business to convey reasonable precautions. This applies to all of us. You know, I'm giving you this in the context of what we've been telling people, but you know what? We should be talking to ourselves about all these same things, and I'll bet you are. So don't overcommit. You're not actually guaranteeing a corona-free environment, you can't. There's no way, because within the context of the 6 days between when you do the screening, you don't know what they've been exposed to. They may not have symptoms. They may not have a temperature that you can actually determine when, I should say, a high temperature, an elevated temperature, when you shoot them with the gun. And you're just doing the best you can. But under the circumstances, I think, making sure that you have screened your employees' families, making sure that you are advising your customers or clients the care that you have taken, making sure that you're doing proper screening, temperature taking, etc., and making sure that you try to create a work environment that minimizes the ability of one employee to expose another to anything, let alone this virus. So you will notice that when they do the White House briefings, it seems like the reporters have, it seems like they've removed 3 chairs in between each one, and they're doing most of those briefings in the Rose Garden. A lot of companies are considering reopening. And in the context of reopening, they are thinking that they'll have half of their folks work from home, half of their folks work in the office, but spread them out. And I believe this is something that the county in large part actually is utilizing as a methodology to rotate people in, to make sure that people are able to stay current on their governmental duties and yet not really risk them. Some businesses are having a guard stationed at the front to ask the following questions. Everything we had on that questionnaire, what are you doing here? Taking their ID, all that kind of stuff, especially the larger buildings. At least so there's, in the case of a landlord, building owner, an additional layer of scrutiny that they are providing to the commercial customer. So those are some of the things I think are appropriate to think about. It's appropriate and probably the most important thing for us to ensure safety, but we also have to try to figure out if we can do business while being safe and minimizing the risk. I think the thing that bothers me the most is what I began by telling you, and that is that this was largely unavoidable. I had a job, 2 different jobs, that required me every single month to go back to the board of directors and the key executives at NextEra, at Florida Power and Light, every single month, and tell them what the public policy was that was being evolved in the state legislative sessions that typically start in January, usually end around March, May, depending upon the state. They're every other year, like Texas and North Dakota, but I would have to go back to them and tell them what was going on in every state legislature and the policies that they were hoping to have enacted and where we fell short, where we knocked it out of the park. And when I went to Washington, I did the same thing. And you can be a lawyer forever and not really appreciate the way some of these really great businesses work. But the way they work is, and I had an opportunity, to be inside of that business, they could adjust to any policy and make money if they had enough time and they understood really what was involved. And that's what they would do. They would figure out how to adjust to a bad policy, a good policy, a policy that they couldn't really discern the effect of. And so we had, for example, the warning that, 2 weeks from now, we're probably going to have to begin to work from home. You probably need to make sure that you've ordered scanners and laptops and, double protected your ability to get to the internet by all of your employees from home. Let's make sure we have optic readers and everything we need to be able to do work from home. Let's figure it out. Let's share the information. And we probably could have done a lot better at maintaining our economy if we had figured it out and done it slower. The other problem is there was no real direction. Business people were making decisions based upon their gut and their judgment and the factors of,
Hey, Dave, we can't actually hear you anymore. I don't know if your microphone got cut off.
How about now?
That's better. Good job.
All right.
Okay.
How much did you miss? All of it? How lucky are you?
Probably like 15 seconds.
Okay, good. So I think the last thing that I was simply saying is that we could have avoided a lot of this had we eased into it a little bit better, planned a little bit better. And why do I say that? Do I say that because I want to pick at government? No, but it's timely that if we're going to do this and go back to work, that we begin to do this in a more organized way with a lot of thought and with some caregiving. And of course, the problem is, at least from what I've seen of those that I see on television, it's a different skill set to be a government leader than to run a business. And the challenge is the public official has a duty, of course, to maintain the economy and but primarily it's safety, health, welfare. The business owner, however, is absorbed by a bunch of things. So if we consult with somebody, and this applies to the conversation I have with myself inside my own head, with Carolina, who's my trusted counsel, who's on the call with us. So you get people on the phone and they go through a number of things. They're like, oh my God, what about these loan programs? Tell me the features. You know, half the time you're saying, well, it hasn't passed yet. You know, it's stalled. But okay, now we've got it. Here's what the text says. They haven't really identified some of the details. They want to know how they should deal with the unemployment compensation that's been made available by the state of Florida. That is, geez, this is a great opportunity for me to keep my employees relatively whole at no expense to me. They talk about layoffs and when should we begin the layoff. They talk about, you know, there's the underperforming employee. This is maybe an opportunity for me to, you know, clean the decks and do the things for my business I should have done. Some businesses, however, need to shut down, but they don't want to lose their employees. And they want those employees to have the ability to go to the state programs and to fund their households. But they also know that that's going to leave a gap between what they get from the government and what they would otherwise earn if they were fully employed. Some people are trying retention loans. That is, if you come back to work for me, I'm going to, you know, forgive this loan, but here's this loan. It's, you know, either calculated on a monthly basis. What's the delta between what they were making and what the government is going to provide? But I don't think there's any legal way for those employees to work. Simply put, their loans would be forgiven once they came back to work. And most businesses, and I'll bet all of us, have some sort of a plan in place already, because we figured out that depending upon whether we have a loan, depending upon whether we collect what we're owed, depending upon a lot of factors, we may need to make hard decisions. So every business I know, and we as well, have an April 30 plan. Expenses will be cut. We're trying to keep everybody employed, but you know, we have a plan for April 30. We have a plan for May 30, and we have a plan for June 30. And I hope we don't have to implement any of them, but we have them. And we discuss that with everybody because you should. You should look at your numbers, and you know, now's the time to do things like that. Obviously, everybody talks about the PPP application and those logistical details, but I actually only know anecdotally of anyone who's actually gotten any funding. I've not had a single friend / client have anything come through. And you know, it's one of us said it's remarkable that panic hasn't set in. It's remarkable that society continues to function and there's not chaos, rioting, and everything else because of the true lack of being honest with people about what we know and maybe what to expect around the corner. So we have all these calls with people, and they're my buds. I mean, I think people I grew up with, and they're like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we do this? Do I lay people off? How do I keep my business alive? And we talk through all these things. And then I say to them, and I think this is the most important lesson, and it was one that I really think was underlined by the chamber. So let's say this conversation happened on March 20th. Well, we didn't know that much on March 20th, but we knew we'd know more on March 21st, and we knew we'd know more on March 22nd. We knew we would know more as each successive day passed. And it really wasn't appropriate maybe on a particular date to close your business down or make a hard decision, or am I going to lay people off? You allow those decisions to percolate so that you have additional information, and we know more and can make those decisions based upon the best information available at the moment you have to make that decision. So we'll make a decision on whether we trigger the April 30 things on April 29. or April 30. And I'm able eventually to talk these people into what we've done, and I'll bet all of you have done. And that is, you have these people who are loyal to you, that you love, that you respect, that you admire for how they help you with your business. Why not keep them employed, and why not take out that list of things that you just have always intended to achieve in your business and haven't had a chance to do it? That could be anything from, you know, encouraging people to go through their CRM. You might have noticed in the latter days of March, you got a lot of notes from people that are your friends that you've done business with, checking in. How about marketing? How about, is your business going to be different when we come out of this than it was when you went in? In other words, are there opportunities that your business can meet? And do you need to have a new marketing plan? Is your marketing as good as it can be? Can you use time to train employees? Are there people that you want to season? And so we've been recommending, and we've done it ourselves, that we use the 2 weeks or so from when we had a conversation like that sometime in March through about, you know, the beginning of April, to keep people employed, because that is really, you know, how we're going to keep the economy going, is keep your businesses open and do the best you can, and hopefully collect what you're owed and be good to one another and work together. But what was really impressive to me was, within a few days of all of this hitting, our Chamber of Commerce had circulated every single member of the chamber that does business in the food service industry, that has a takeout menu and takeout capability, trying to influence that business where 80% of us are still open and working from home, try to influence movement towards the businesses that are really affected. And I think that as we, again, these are things we thought about in the past, but they become much, much, much more important now, as we begin to realize that unless we take the right sort of care, we're not going to be in a position to safely reopen. The absence of testing is or at least the absence of coordinated governmental testing is a problem, but the business that wants to open can get testing done of employees. And it's about $75 per employee, and it can be done, it's reliable, and it can be done privately. So there's an expense. The problem is, it's not really any good for very long, because people can thereafter be exposed to symptomatology to elements of the virus that will cause them to be infected. So in any event, those are the kinds of conversations we've been having, the kind of encouragement we've been having. And I don't like to ever come to the chamber and talk about our firm. I bring this up because I think these are the conversations that we should all be having, are having, and perhaps these thoughts can enhance the plans that we make as we move forward. But I think it's really important that we figure out, as business people, how we can work together and help one another, because I think it's beyond our federal government's ability to guide us on that. And it's sad, but I'll tell you this, I see the faces and the names of some of my local elected officials, and I know you guys are up to the task, and you can help us orchestrate the coming out party, or whatever we're going to call it. What's fascinating to me on top of that advice, however, is some of the things that I think were unexpected. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take a minute or two to reflect on some of these human things that I think we're all discovering about ourselves. One, some people really miss their coworkers. I know that a lot of you have been doing virtual happy hours. We had a virtual happy hour last Friday, 2 Fridays ago. People were overjoyed to see one another, to see one another's faces, to look at each other's children, to meet each other's dogs. There's a real human component to the office and the workplace that I think some of us didn't realize how much we cherished and how valuable it was. We try to stay in touch much better by using video. If you're a Microsoft Office 365 licensee, you have available to you a product called Teams, which is amazing. Any idiot, I can use it, so any idiot can use it. And it's really great because it allows you to see your folks. It allows you to connect with them. When you're trying to lead a team, you're doing a bunch of things. You're trying to teach them, train them, lead them, meet deadlines. But most importantly, the boss typically has to synthesize deadlines and reorder priorities. And oftentimes when you're giving people a set of priorities, you're overwhelming them, and we all know that. And we have to make sure that they understand what their top 3 or 4 are, because a human can't accomplish much more than that. Well, we find that using Teams, a video like this, is a much better way for us, to keep everybody aligned, to keep everyone organized, because emails do not convey tone. Emails can be misread. We had a mistake yesterday because an email was misread. I wrote it, so I'll take all the blame. But I thought I was communicating one thing, and I didn't. And sometimes it's much better in person. So that's great. The other thing, I've always admired. I have a mom. I've always admired moms. I find that in my particular workplace, women are incredibly valuable because of their innate talents and skills, such as a hyper organization, ability to balance and juggle. And so we have many coworkers in our firm that are women. And I think universally, what we are finding is it's incredibly difficult for moms who have children at home to get as much done as they otherwise would. So we have to lower our expectations. We're not going to produce as much work from the stay-at-home employee who's got a lot of responsibility, because and Whitney and I had this interaction as well. Some of them are trying to educate their children, right? They're trying to make sure that the kids stay on track. Some of them are trying to keep children interested and from not jumping out the window, and still try to do their job. So a study came out. They see that most people are working a full day and pretty much getting just as much done, but they're working a longer day. In other words, they might be working 7 to 7 or 7 to 8 with a big break in the middle, because they need to. They've got things they've got to do. They've got people to feed. They've got things to do. But what I really feel terrible about is I can see the stress on the faces of the people, and it's men and women, by the way. So all that I said about moms, I love dads too, but the people who are responsible for raising children while they're working from home are having a hard time. I see some husbands and wives where both of them work, they're splitting. 4 hours in the morning, the gentleman is committing to his workplace with some childcare in the afternoon that's going to distract him, and the wife does the opposite. So, that is also something that I see being integrated, but I think it's important. We just bring it up once a week or so to say, guys, we appreciate what you're doing. We know how hard it is, and constantly remind them that we know that it's really hard, much harder to get things done from home at times, particularly until you figure out how to work from home, and there's going to be a lot of interruption. So I find that that's fascinating. There are a lot of adjustments that need to be made to working from home, and it takes some time. It takes some getting used to. And some of the ideas that are being provided are, maintain, and I think all of us have crafted our own how-tos on this thing, but do you maintain your routines? Are you getting up and, showering? Sorry to be blunt. Are you maintaining a schedule? Are you maintaining a schedule that's consistent? Are you able to, and this is just as important, and I think I'm the worst violator. I'm working night and day, and I have 2 really cool kids. I'm not spending enough time with them, even though they're right here. And so are you taking a break and having lunch with your children, breakfast? And I'm talking now about the working parent, not the non-working parent, because the non-working parent is, obviously already all over that. And we just really think that it's important to reset expectations, make sure you're modeling optimism, make sure you're always encouraging people. Know that you're going to do the best you can to keep their jobs, and let them know that every so often. Let them know that you're doing everything you can do and you're committed to make sure their lives aren't disrupted. And I think it's important. I had a conversation with one of our young lawyers today who told me she couldn't sleep last night. And I was talking to another young person in our group, and they're really anxious. Some of the younger folks are more anxious than the older folks, and which I find fascinating. It's really interesting. And when someone tells you that they're experiencing stress, I counsel a non-judgmental check-in. You can't exactly invite yourself into someone's private life, but you can at least let them know that you've had a similar experience, that you too are stressed. Here's how you've learned how to handle stress. Here's how we can maybe work together, you know, Madam Employee, Mr. Employee, to make sure that you understand that stress is a completely wasted emotion, and we're going to get rid of it, and here's how we're going to deal with it. There have been a lot of articles written in terms of how to maintain productivity from home. I think that everybody's using their own, their own methods and means to get that done. But I think the main thing is be organized, lead your team, make sure they understand what it is you expect them to do, check in with them to make sure that they're doing those things. And if they are falling short, try to be understanding, and try to be accommodating, and try to shift work. We do that every day. We try to figure out who's got what. Much more difficult to manage work and who's got what availability to get work done than it would be in a normal office setting. On the other hand, there's some real advantages of what we've experienced here. We realize that maybe the commitment of anywhere between 5 and 9, 11, 12% of a business's revenue to pay rent might be a number that comes down. You might find that you're able to operate with a crew of independent contractors and stay-at-home folks and get a lot done, create half jobs. You know, we have 20-hour jobs that we utilize. We use a lot of working moms because it works out great for us. And so, you know, you can divide those jobs up into 20-hour jobs and make sure that you're filling up their quota of what they can actually handle. It is a lot harder, I think, in some cases to deliver to clients and customers than it otherwise was. I wonder how many of us are actually making that clear to our customers and clients. Do you want to say to a customer client, we're up and running and we're able to do whatever you need us to do? Or do you want to say, hey, sometimes it's a little more difficult to get things done on time than we would otherwise find it to be the case? I think sometimes things happen and you have to explain to clients that, you know, we're just as affected. Our business, Madam Client, Mr. Client, is just as affected, and we're doing everything we can to do everything we can to keep things rolling. And then one last thing that we found incredibly useful, and if there's any one thing you write down, I would ask you to write down the word LAST, L-A-S-T, PASS, P-A-S-S. LastPass is a new technology, relatively new technology that allows you, the business owner, to keep all of the passwords for your group secure. Allow them to access everything you need them to access without actually knowing the passwords, because it's in LastPass, because you're able to provide them with access to LastPass, which will automatically log them in. So if you have new employees, you know, they've only been with you 20 days or 2 weeks or 20 weeks, and you don't really know them, you don't know their background, you haven't done a criminal, search on them or anything else, you're actually enabling every one of those people access to your business through the inside of your business in a way that's incredibly dangerous. And yes, you can have non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements and all those sorts of things with your employees, but few people do. And this being a right to work state, few people do. And I think that this is a really important thing that's almost effortless to try to achieve. So LastPass, L-A-S-T-P-A-S-S, all one word. So I hope that was helpful. I really appreciate what the Chamber has done, including this seminar, to help businesses work together. But I think we all realize that we're on our own and we've got to figure this out. And I hope some of these ideas become of use to you.
Awesome, thank you. I do actually have a couple of questions that were submitted, so I'll go ahead and get started with the first one, Dave. What can the municipalities do to help our business community during this time of quarantine and going forward when we start to ease up on our restrictions?
Well, I think we have
Dave,
to have a
what-
protocol. I'm sorry. I think we have to have a protocol that is in some manner created or approved by government as to what we can and what we can and cannot do.
You know, some of the stuff, so we've been participating in a lot of different calls with a lot of different chambers from all over the state, and I'm hearing all kinds of things. But as far as what can municipalities do to help our small businesses, there's a lot of things, right? Grants, offer some grants to some of our small businesses to help them get back, open up and get them going. Maybe some tax breaks, maybe waiving some fees on certain things, maybe changing some sort of ordinances, you know, that could help them save a little money here and there. So I know Ron Ferris, the city manager of Palm Beach Gardens, has reached out to the chamber and to the PGA Corridor Association to set up a call to kind of discuss what we can do to help open back up for business, if that makes any sense. So that's something that the chamber is working on with the city of Palm Beach Gardens, and I'm sure we'll be working with other municipalities as well.
You guys have done great, Noel. I'm so proud of you, and you've been forward looking and thinking, and that is great. I'm glad you're all over that.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. You had mentioned, you had shown us that form for employees. Who will actually be the keeper of the data, and how often will this need to be filed?
And I just missed which form, Brittany, the question was directed to.
Yep, the form that you had shown up earlier, the employee like sanitation form.
So it would in the event that you're using a business to do business and you want them to certify that the employees they provide to you are, you know, basically screened, you would have, I think you need to do it every Friday. And again, this is all sort of, we're making this up, but I think that because you can be symptom free and virus free on a Tuesday and get it on a Wednesday, you know, the shorter amount of time that you do screening, the better. So, you know, every 7 days. And, you know, I think the science is still out there on what you do in terms of the actual test.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And then I would make sure that that information is funneled to the business that actually is using those employees. If it's your business and your employees, which we're also doing, then you would just keep that internally just keep it internally somewhere.
Okay, wonderful. And then, okay, so as far as legal standing, how can the business community reconcile what may be large differences in opinion from the medical community and the political factions on when it is truly safe to start opening the economy?
I mean, that's the $1 million question. I feel as though we're not focused on, you know, to me, we need to go to the countries that have been affected, study how they've reopened, the methodology they've utilized, and we should transplant that here and do the same thing. So, you know, Iran, Italy, China, they have learned things that I don't think is being shared with the business person. And you would hope that there's a way to determine, you know, that you can do business in a way that's not safe, but minimizes risk. And I think that it involves, you know, having people work further away, using as much of this as we can, using screening, and I don't know if you're picking up any of that, Noel, at your end, if there are better ideas out there for this, but it's time, because I think you're going to see the government, the federal government anyway, is going to come out with some guidance on this soon.
If I may say something, we at Transworld, we had a conversation today, and what we're going to do is most of us are working from home, but the boss is going to bring in just the smaller staff, the office staff, one by one, and keep them separate, like you said, and then little by little, he will open the offices up for brokers to come back in. But we're going to do it slow, very slow too.
I mean, look, the gold standard is probably testing and sorting people into two buckets. this is the bucket of people that's, and this is what they're proposing in some of the European countries. The people that have been exposed can go to work in various ways. Those who have not been exposed, you have to have a different level of scrutiny and care taken. But I think that's out the window because, as I said, the test isn't really going to prove anything except, you don't have it at that moment.
Wonderful. Okay, so I don't have any more questions in the chat, but does anyone else have any questions for Dave before we end this, or maybe a positive note to leave on?
So I have a positive note.
Awesome.
I was born during the presidency of John F. Kennedy. Most people my age and those who are younger than me have never had a challenge like those that came before us. You could argue 9/11 was a challenge, yeah, we have to take our shoes off, but we've never had a challenge. We didn't fight in Vietnam. We were too young. We haven't had a World War II. We haven't had a World War III. But I really do believe in the ability of the American people to be self-determinative and to band together when tough times are afoot and work together to figure things out. And I think this is one of those times. I lived, some of you were in Miami during Hurricane Andrew. That was the sense. Everybody pulled together, everybody worked together. I think the most important thing we can do is to figure out how we can focus on those that cannot work and help them. Because I think the rest of us can do what we do. So I'm glad. Hey, I love the chamber. I really appreciate that we have you as a resource in our lives. I really, I know you guys are working as hard as everybody else to do God's work, and appreciate you making this opportunity for all of us to get together.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time to dedicate to sharing the message with our membership and members of our community. It's very much appreciated on the chamber's end for sure.
And a fourth member of our class is on the call. Hi, Penn.
There she is.
Dave, great job. Great job with your presentation. Really appreciate your leadership and everything you do for us at the chamber. We couldn't do it without our amazing members, and just thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your leadership.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.